Abnormal Andy, and Phantom Dark Dave. The Screaming Skull Podcast.
Welcome to the Screaming Skull Podcast, a place where horror fans can feel at home. And I'm one of your hosts, Abnormal Andy, and my other host is Phantom Dark Dave. Dave, how you doing tonight?
What's up, Andy? Doing good, man. Staying warm. How about you?
Yeah, I am trying to. We are like in a literal blizzard right now up here in Kansas City, and it's pretty bad. We can't even leave the house, so we're just kind of stuck here for the weekend, and probably have to stay home for a day from work, which that's okay.
Would you consider yourself an introvert?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So staying at home's okay.
Oh yeah, it's like my dream.
Just quit your job. You can do it every day.
Well, yeah. I wouldn't have any money to pay the bills though, right?
Well, that's what wives are for. Oh, hey.
Oh,
Julie.
yeah, okay.
Just wait. But no, man, I'm doing good. We're in 2025. This is going to be our first episode of the new year. And, you and I talked about it in our last episode. We want to get into doing a couple of different things as we continue to grow the podcast. And one of the ideas that we had was let's bring some guests on. We wanted to kind of establish how we were going to do the podcast before we brought people into our so-called mess. But I think we found a good rhythm. And so we'll see how this goes today. We got a real fun top 5 coming up that I'm pretty excited about.
Oh yeah, for sure. So without further ado, I guess we'll go ahead and introduce our guest. And his name is Brian, and he runs a podcast called the Terrible Terror Podcast, and he's been doing it for, I don't know, Brian, how long have you been doing the show for?
I've been doing it for a little over 10 years.
Yeah. So, welcome to the Screaming Skull Podcast, Brian. We're really glad that you accepted our invitation. We can be kind of crazy. Yeah.
No, well, I talk a lot with Dave and everything, so I know exactly what crazy is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're lucky that I got all my teeth pulled and I'm back to normal now. I can defend myself.
Yeah, I know. He had to skip out on a Christmas episode because of the teeth issue.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really unfortunate.
It might have been fun if you were hocked up on something and a little loopy while you talked about Pee Wee Herman.
I don't think I could speak was the problem, dude. But, Andy and I have been podcasting together for a really long time, and we've been through several different shows. Andy and I both have appeared on your show, and we thought it was time to, bring somebody on our show. And, of course, you were one of the first few people to come to mind. There's a few folks we want to get on here, but because we all talk, actively, it only made sense to bring you on here, and you've always been a big supporter of us. And so the crazy thing is, if you guys remember, the last time all three of us were on a call together was back in the Black Cat Shadow days, and we talked about our favorite guilty pleasure movies.
Oh yeah,
that
was fun.
That's right. Yeah, that was a fun show.
And it's pretty cool that Brian actually went on to do some of those movies on his show, specifically like Jack Frost. That was a lot of fun.
Oh God!
Yeah.
But
just don't touch Jack Frost too.
Yeah, or his carrot. But talking to both of you guys individually and collectively, I noticed that it seemed like Andy might have had the easiest time making his list. It didn't take him near as long, or at least he's not revealing his difficulties. But I know that Brian and I have both said this has definitely been one of the hardest top 5 lists to do.
Yeah, so we're going to be doing a top 5 final girls list, and we also each have one honorable mention. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, we had like 20 or 30, but we narrowed it down to one apiece. And this is going to be cool because we're going to have potentially 3 different lists of top 5s, one honorable mention, and I'm hoping that we don't have too many similarities because if you do your research, you'll find there are actually several different final girls who can be in a high contendership for a top 5 list. But the one thing that I noticed, I don't know if you guys dealt with the same thing, was even though you love a horror movie, you actually may or may not love the final girl. And so somebody who you thought would easily be on your list might not have made the cut.
It was like the research into doing this list drove me insane because it's just like I'm trying to remember all the movies, and then like you said, it's whether or not you liked the final girl that was there. And if she truly was a final girl in your opinion for the way that the list worked, and then a lot of the lists out there, like at least if you're looking at just getting a base and you're saying, okay, well, let's see what people have said about their favorite final girls. and a lot of them are like exactly the same, and I don't necessarily agree with a lot of them in terms of like my tastes and what I have. So it's sitting there, and the fact that you were like only one for your honorable mention, I'm like, son of a bitch.
Well, and that's the thing
God damn it.
is us three, you know, we're obviously three individuals, but we have similar tastes. And so I was really hoping that we wouldn't have too much crossover. But then again, I didn't want to go so obscure that people wouldn't know who I was talking about, because I started going down some B movies. But then, you know, a lot of the horror movies I mostly like for the villain role. And so when it comes down to who the hero is in the movie, either one, oh, I'll be damned, it's not a girl, it's a boy. We got to do a top 5 final boys. But then it's just, you know, the protagonist and antagonist have to match up, right? You can't have where the final girl only wins because the script says so. She's got to be able to hold her own in some shape, way, or form. And so I felt like that took my list from being really interesting and obscure to being kind of not necessarily predictable, but maybe more predictable than you two would have thought my list would have been. So I'm looking forward to see what happens, though.
Yeah, there were some people that I was looking at and like came to mind, and there were a couple that ended up in my honorable mentions list that were like, it's like a switch of things towards the end of the movie, and are they really the final girl? But they're kind of considered the final girl. Like in my mind, yeah, okay, it makes sense that they're the final girl, but it was like, is it really that way? Like you talk about, you know, a lot of the final girls that are out there that are extremely popular, very strong, you know, female characters. You don't have a lot that, like you said, don't fight back or don't have some type of strength that's gained from, you know, the experiences that they go through in the film. And there are a couple that do completely flip the script that I like a lot, and I was very surprised about. But like those people need to be left off the honorable mentions list, since I can only pick one, Dave.
This is not abnormal. Most top 5s only have one honorable mention. Otherwise, it's called fuzzy math. But I know one thing that I noticed with this is there's a lot of horror movies that I really like where the final girl was good, but there were other characters who I kind of wish would have been the final girl, because maybe the actress was just a better overall performer, or just the character was better written, but they had to kill it off for the sake of the story. But I don't know if you guys came across that. There were some where I was like, damn, I would have liked to put this person in, but technically they're not the final girl.
I think you guys put more thought into it than I did.
That's why your list came together so much better. But because of that, we'll see who has the better list. But, you know, Andy, I'm going to try to let you be the ringleader. You can kind of announce the order and get us started.
All right. So, yeah, we wanted to, since we have a guest on here, we're going to let Brian go first with his first honorable mention, and then I'll go next, and then Dave will have the pleasure of going last.
Best for last.
Yeah.
Are you sure that's the way it is? Is best for last? That's what you want to go with?
Yeah.
Man, I have it's hard to pick from the honorable mentions, but you know, I was trying to think, do I go with a classic? Do I go with somebody that you wouldn't expect? And looking over the list again and going through, I'm going to have to go with Sally, played by Marilyn Burns from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, as my honorable mention.
Wow, you know, that's a great pick. You know, it's like it's interesting. Like, I think some people kind of overlook her in a lot of times because I think, you know, in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the main character seems to be Leatherface, and you kind of forget about Sally. She's actually the protagonist, and so yeah, that's a great pick, though. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, there were plenty others that were kind of classics to choose from, and it was I really struggled where I wanted to go. And it's funny because we recently saw this when it was re-released into theaters.
Bastard.
A couple months ago. Yeah, I know, bastard me. And like, I forgot how much I like her character, and I think that's kind of affecting, like, in my honorable mentions for this. And you'll probably be surprised at that there's only one other, like, kind of classic one that even makes my top 5, and it's not going to be, I think, what anybody expects.
Well, you know, you can kind of flip it, because Leatherface could be the final girl. He does wear a woman's face at some point.
That's true, but you said no boys. And he identifies as a boy.
Right, it's a 2024 remake. Leatherface is no longer the villain.
Oh, okay.
I love your pick, man. I'm from
that
Texas,
way-
so I got to give love to Sally as well. And I'm a little bitter that you got to see it in theater because, as I've mentioned on this podcast several times, I was ready. I was ready to buy my tickets first day, and then all of a sudden they go, "Nah, we're skipping Dallas-Fort Worth." I'm like, really?
What? How can you skip Dallas? It doesn't make
It's
any
fucking
sense.
Texas. Come on.
Right.
But
What did they do? They decided to go out to El Paso or something like that?
I mean, who knows? Maybe Austin, most likely. But Brian, when you went, was it an AMC theater?
No, we went through a Century Theater.
Nah, see, we don't have that here. Maybe that's the problem. Is I always go to the local AMC, and I think Andy does the same thing. But I tried to keep an open mind. Like if it was going to go to a Cinemark or something close by, I was willing to go. But I just, it didn't happen. So hey, hooray! I'll be here for the 80th anniversary. So,
Yeah.
all right, man. Well, you give Brian some kudos on his honorable mention. Andy, what do you got?
All right, so we were talking about earlier how there may be movies that we really like, but we just don't really care for the final girl. Well, my honorable mention is kind of the other way around. I'm not a huge fan of the franchise, but I really like this final girl, and that is Kirsty Cotton from the Hellraiser franchise.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of like the franchise as a whole, but or even I'm not a huge fan of the first two movies either that she's actually in. But I do have to give her props. She is a great final girl. She really is intelligent and puts up a good, battles the antagonist really well. Pinhead and all of his buddies and stuff like that. So really have to give her a shout out as an honorable mention at least.
That's what
I agree.
Yeah, that's what honorable mention spots for. And how many of those Hellraiser movies have you seen, Andy?
Let's see. I've seen 1, 2, 3, 4. I think 6. 5 and 6.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you had seen the sixth one for a particular reason.
That's right, because she is actually in the sixth one.
There you
too,
go.
I think.
Yeah, when I heard you
Yeah.
say the first two, I'm like, oh, Andy didn't finish the franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say she's one of those examples where she eventually kind of becomes the villain, right?
Yeah.
As the franchise moves along. And that was one of the kind of twists in that franchise that I kind of like, because I mean it doesn't go down the route of the Amityville Horror franchise, but it definitely gets.
Aren't you supposed to say spoiler when
there.
you say stuff like that, Brian?
Maybe.
No, okay. Just making sure.
I mean, how old is the movie?
Oh, we're not going to play that card because the other day you revealed something that was spoilery to me on a movie I hadn't seen, and I was so like, no, and that just made me so crazy. And we'll have that talk after this recording because I'm not going to ruin it for other people.
no.
Oh yeah, it's coming, bro. But no, Andy, I love your pick, man, because you know who else loves that character? And it's Neil.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to our buddy Neil Frazier. Does awesome poster art, including some really kick-ass Hellraiser posters. But now that I got the floor, I'm going to tell you guys about my honorable mention because I'm probably going to piss a lot of people off. It's Laurie Strode from the first two Halloween films. We all know that the Halloween franchise is kind of chaotic with its storylines. It's kind of like a Goosebumps choose-your-own-ending type thing. And I know I might be in the minority, but Halloween 1 and 2 is where it's at for me. I do like Halloween 3, but since Michael Myers isn't in it, Laurie Strode's technically not in it. When I just consider her character, I don't like what they do with it in H2O and Resurrection. I don't like what they do with it in 2018. But the first two movies are very strong, and though I'm invested in it because I like Michael Myers and Dr. Loomis, you can't deny that Laurie Strode is crucial to the term final girl. Like, she didn't start it, but her character definitely inspired other final girls that followed after, especially in the 80s.
Yeah, that's a great pick. She's definitely an iconic final girl, one that kind of usually comes to mind when people are talking about final girls, if not the final girl that comes to mind. But yeah, I mean, this episode wasn't going to get made without her name mentioned, I'm sure.
Well, now I've revealed it's not my number one, so that's up to you two.
Right, and I will say people are going to hate me even more than you. So, but yeah, I mean that's part of the the classic found girls, and like you said, it's the archetype I think for a lot of people when they think about final girls is directly with Laurie Strode, and in my mind, is she the best one that's out there? I don't think so. I don't even think that's the best Jamie Lee Curtis final girl role that she has.
Oh man, and you know what's so perfect about what you just said is I hope I'm not pulling the rug out from anybody, but I went down that road because I originally had a different Jamie Lee Curtis final girl character on my list, but that is a great example of how like I love this movie and she did a great job, but as a final girl, she was barely present, and so it just wasn't effective enough to me to earn the spot on a final list, and so I went with her most effective role as an honorable mention. But I definitely, and I'll reveal it right now, I don't want to hear what you guys think in case it's on your list, but I was ready to have Kimberly Hammond as my number one final girl because Prom Night's one of my favorite movies of all time, but unfortunately, even though her character has a really cool ending, and especially her face-off with the villain, it just wasn't enough for me when I looked at who the other people were on the list. I'm like, they earned it. She was just kind of there. But that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting conversation about Jamie Lee Curtis because she has played the final role in other movies, but I always kind of forget about those other movies. I think Halloween always comes up first, and so yeah, those other movies kind of always get overshadowed, I think.
Well, luckily we got Brian who covers the remake sequel of Terror Train, and so maybe when they hear his episode, they'll be like, "Oh, it's a remake of what?" And then some people will see Terror Train, and then they'll see some of her older roles that aren't Halloween related, but. That's our honorable mentions. I'm going to hand it back to Brian. Go ahead and let's get into the bread of the sandwich. What do you got for number 5?
All right, so number 5, this one might feel out of left field, but I love the character, and I love how the progression of this character goes through this movie. And while I'm not a huge fan of all of the movies, because the second one I think is kind of trash when it comes to it, but it's Helen, played by Virginia Madsen, in Candyman.
Okay.
Awesome.
I love her progression because she's not a typical final girl that you have. She's already pretty strong in what she's experiencing throughout the movie and how she deals with it, and ultimately how she kind of comes to accept being in that role. And I just love the ending of Candyman. Like it's so great with the husband there in the bathroom, and she pops up as him. And
it's a bit of a stinger, isn't it? It's good.
Yeah. It's great.
Andy, remember back when you and I reviewed Candyman 1 and 2 when we did Black Cat and when we were guests on Kyle's podcast back in time?
Yeah, I do remember. That was cool. It's a fun time.
Yeah. I wonder if Brian heard that episode because he would have heard how much I love the second Candyman. Piece of shit.
Yeah. Farewell to the Flesh is not that great of a Candyman movie. Though I did kind of like the reboot. Like, there were things I didn't like about it, but I liked what they were doing with the story.
Did you see the third one? Because that movie doesn't hold up.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I don't know if I've seen the third one.
Okay, then we'll leave it with there. It felt like a Showtime produced film, if that tells you anything. But
probably was sci-fi.
Maybe. But yeah, I love your pick. To be honest with you, through a lot of research that I did, her name didn't pop up near as much as some of the other names, so I'm glad that you're able to give her some love.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it, Brian, because that is a really cool movie, and I just totally didn't even think about it. So yeah, I'm glad that you brought it up.
It's because you don't like candy, Andy.
You don't like candy, man.
Yeah. So all right, so for my number 5, this is like a newer final girl, kind of one that's just recently gotten into the spotlight. And this is Sienna Shaw from the Terrifier franchise.
Badass.
That's a very good pick.
It's interesting the way that this franchise goes. In the first movie, you think that you're going to get one final girl, and you don't. You actually don't get any final girls, it seems like. And then in the second one, we get the character of Sienna Shaw, and she's just awesome. I mean, just the way that she puts on that costume and the Angel Warrior and stuff is really cool.
No, you just like her nose ring.
Sure, but then it's interesting. Part 3, we kind of get a different. We see a different side of her, I guess. Dealing with the trauma from her past and things like that. But yeah, I really like the character. I think she's a strong final girl. Definitely going to be. I think she's going to be a strong pick for like the more modern final girls that we've seen here lately.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I actually love her more in 3 than I do 2. And I think that it's not just that I like that there's a little more of that like trauma that she's got going on, how she's dealing with it. I think as an actress herself, that she's much stronger in 3, and that role fits her way better than it did in 2.
Yeah, 3's, even though it like 2, it goes some places that are kind of outside the realm of reality. It also feels like a more grounded in reality type movie. And Julie hasn't seen part 3 yet, so I won't reveal too much. But I know, Brian, I heard your order on your podcast of kind of how you rank them, and you said that Terrifier 3 was like your second favorite film of 2024, and you and I actually agree on number 1. I actually love Late Night with the Devil as well, and I know Andy does too. But I'm with you guys. I mean, she definitely establishes herself not only as a good final girl, but a future Scream Queen. I wouldn't be surprised if she popped up in more things after this franchise is done.
Oh yeah, I hope she does. And like going over like who's the main actress for Scream 5 and 6?
Oh, Melissa.
Right.
What's her last name? Oh,
I can't remember her name off the top of my head. That's how much I like her.
yeah.
But like I'd love to see her get into a big franchise like that. I think that she would excel, and she needs to be seen as an actress by more people and get better. Like, I'm not saying that the Terrifier roles are bad roles, because I think that it's good for her, but I think that she could do much bigger and better things, and as an actress she's definitely glowing up.
Yep, Melissa Barrera is. It's actually not hard. We just couldn't remember. So
Yeah, 'cause
people don't have to yell at us.
I only
Sorry.
remember Jenna Ortega.
There you go. There's definitely movies she's in where she's not the final girl, so that's a whole nother conversation. But awesome. Well, my number 5 is Vanita Brock, also known as Stretch from Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, played by Caroline Williams. And so it's funny, I'm really glad that Brian had Sally on the list, because I had a hard time choosing between Stretch and Sally, and I decided that I didn't want to have 2 final girls from the same franchise on my list. And so I gave Stretch kind of the edge because she outsmarts Leatherface, she kills Chop Top, and she even wears Lefty's face. And so in my notes, I wrote down, she's the DJ from Texas who knows all the right words to say. And if you've seen the movie, you know what those words are. But I love some Caroline Williams. How you guys feel about that?
Well, when it comes to you, I wouldn't have thought that you'd pick anybody else.
Woo!
Yeah, no, it's a great pick. It's probably my favorite movie of the franchise, of that franchise. So, yeah, I agree. Sadly, she's not on my list, but it's definitely a great pick, and I definitely can agree that she is a strong final girl.
Yeah, and she's an awesome actress. Like Caroline Williams inside of, what's that? What is it? The Stepfather Part 2. She is a pretty awesome character as well. She's not the final girl, but she's a supporting actress, and so I feel like she's a good Scream Queen. But cool, man. Let's keep this train rolling. Let's go to number 4. Brian, what you got?
Okay, number 4 on the list. And I had to move things around, and
Naturally.
it feels like would be a homer pick for me, as it were. And it's going to be Kay, played by Julie Adams in The Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah.
It's because, one, I absolutely love this movie. It's not, if you know me, this is my favorite of the Universal monster movies. I just love the endearingness of the character, and I don't know. It's just, there's something about seeing her on the screen and with it all mixes together so well. And it doesn't seem like a typical like damsel in distress type of final girl when watching her on the screen. I love it.
Well, I could talk about it all day. I just love that you're bringing up some Universal monster talk. Now, this podcast can be 4 hours long. Sorry, Andy. Just kidding. But I'm not going to say I disagree with you, but I had a hard time finding that balance. And when I thought of Kay, I did see her more as a damsel in distress role because of the way that they don't give her ammunition to fight back against the creature, but to be honest, if they did, it wouldn't be the same movie and same tone as it was.
Right.
And so since I did not put her on there, I'm really happy you did.
Yeah, and that's where if I'm pretty sure that you had listened to like my Shape of Water podcast. That's where I kind of like now kind of reflect it back to this, where there is this like undertone of almost like a love story that's kind of going on between her and the creature, definitely from the creature's perspective more than from Kay's perspective. But that's where I kind of deflect this being less of a damsel in distress type of situation.
You didn't think that that Kay wanted that creature D?
She might have. I don't know. I mean,
could be little creature
you
babies.
never know how to. Yeah, I mean, it just kind of opens up and pops out. That's the way it works.
I told Julie this the other day, not what you just said, but I was like, I was thinking about it.
That
so
it opens up and pops
that's
out?
right. You think about these movies, and you always have the creature, the monster in the movie, always trying to kidnap the girl. And I'm like, why do they do that? And then, of course, you can look at it as it's being a love story. But if you just want to get dark and gritty for a minute, it's to procreate. That's kind of what the beast, the monster, the creature is always trying to do. And I'm just like, wow, all these monsters are rapists. I'm like, that's not cool. So I had to get out of that and go, yeah, love story, clap, very nice.
Yeah. It's just a love story. Just a love story.
Andy, what do you got for number 4, bro?
All right. My number 4 is going to be Aaron from You're Next.
Badass. Times 2.
This is it's a really cool movie. It's it's a more modern final girl pick, but she is definitely not a damsel in distress. She really turns the tables on our bad guys and just really takes charge, and they it's like one of those things where the more you get to know her, the more of a threat you find out that she is, and she's like scarier than the bad guys are at one point. So yeah, definitely this is on my radar. When I was thinking about Final Girls, I really like the movie. I actually got to interview Sharni Vincent, which was really cool.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so she kind of has that she has that memory, that that significance there. So she's always going to be like a favorite of mine, probably.
I love that pick. She was one of my honorable mentions. Like, I had a hard time leaving her off my list. That movie surprised the absolute shit out of me when I saw it, because it was one of those ones where I saw the trailer and I wasn't super interested in it and going to the theater and seeing it. And then I remember being homesick and just wanted to sit down and watch something that was comforting. I was like, oh, if I fall asleep during this movie, whatever, I'm kind of interested in it. And then I was just glued to it, and she's an awesome final girl.
She really is. Anytime I hear the term final girl, she's actually who I think of first, especially if you want to put her in a couple of decades and say post-2000. I mean, there's a few different girls that come to mind, but nobody really left the impact on me that she did as a character, because like you, I was totally shocked that it went. Even the characters in the movie are like, how do you do this? And she's like, oh, I went to a survival camp. They're like, of course you did. Like, that makes sense. But the actress, and then just the how do you say, just the balls that the writers had to really invest this much badass into the character. Because if you had done this and then the actress could not make it work, it would fall flat. But the combination is deadly, especially with a blender. But, oh man, I absolutely love your pick, man. This would not be a top 5 final girl list if Aaron's character had not been brought up. So
I fully agree.
My number 4 is Teresa Gilbin, also known as Tree, from Happy Death Day 1 and 2. And so I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I absolutely love those movies. I showed my daughter the first one. She said it was like her favorite movie. Then I asked her if she wanted to see the second one. She was like, no, I'm good. So I don't know if I believe it or not. But Tree is played by Jessica Roth, and I like her because of her character arc. Like, she goes from being a spoiled kind of bitchy college student to a likable character who surprisingly, she has a lot of depth. Like, we learn about she's dealing with like the loss of her mother and her tainted relationship with her dad. And I'm a sucker for any time of like family dynamic reunion. And Jessica's performance also reaches insane and comical levels, because those are kind of horror comedies. And then I feel like it just gets to a point where other Final Girls on my list don't come close to. So, like I said, I do really like the Happy Death Day movies, and I just feel like it's mostly due to her performances.
Yeah, that's another one that is like I wish I could have talked about as well, because I love those movies. They're another one of those movies where I did not go to the theaters because I thought it was stupid. I really thought the title was really dumb when I saw it in the trailer. I was like, and then gave it a chance and saw it and absolutely loved it, and so much that I had to see the second one when it was announced. So yeah, that's a great character.
So, confession time here.
Oh, no.
I have not seen either one of these movies.
All right, so we're going to stop the podcast, and we're going to have Andy go watch Happy Death Day, and then we're going to come back and start recording again.
Honest reactions with honest trailers. Abnormal Andy. But, oh, dude, I hope having her on my list of top 5 Final Girls will make you want to see the movies now. And hearing that Brian said he didn't even want to see them, but then he gave it a chance and liked it. I think people are in the majority of liking the movies, but I think your buddies over here love the movies, and that should be your motivation to see them now, for sure.
Yeah, definitely going to the top of my watch list.
He says, scoot over Amityville 304. I'm watching Happy Death Day.
yeah, screw you, Amityville Hanukkah. I'm going to watch this instead.
Yeah, it's a real one. You know it is.
It probably is.
It definitely is. But, we're getting to the middle of the list now. Brian, what do you got for number 3?
Okay, so again, this one's a little more modern, and it's because I absolutely love the actress, and this movie made me fall in love with the actress, and it's Maxine Minks, Mia Goth in X. Like, she is just like, and it's not just X in general. I mean, I would put it with Maxine too, because while Maxine's not as good as either Pearl or X, it's still, I love this character so much, and her progression for what she ended up becoming is great. But just that drive that she has in the film, what she wants to be famous, and doesn't matter what it takes to do those things. It's so eloquently played by her. And even with Pearl, even though it's not about Maxine at all, it still is reflective of the character itself, and you see how similar she is to Pearl, just in, maybe not quite as crazy, but crazy in a different way than she was, but the same type of wants and desires that she had. I just was so enamored when I saw it, because X was, because I love Ty West, and I've loved most of what he's done.
Yep.
There's a couple of things that are just kind of like, they're not that great. Like his Jamestown kind of mockumentary.
Lies.
Okay.
Love that movie.
It's okay to me, but I
do
think
it on your
this
podcast.
is like, I've already talked about it before.
Oops.
But I just, this is like, this is his masterpiece. X is his absolute masterpiece of a movie. It's crafted really well, and speaking of Jenna Ortega, she's in this as well. But I think Maxine is she's just cool and relatively calm and collective, but like just the weird shit that happens and how she deals with it's perfect.
See, this is when Andy goes, confession time. I haven't seen Pearl or Maxine. Go ahead, Andy.
Well, I have seen X.
Exactly.
Yeah, I need to get on that. I kind of I don't know, for some reason I just haven't been like super excited about seeing Pearl, and then I do want to see Maxine, but I know Pearl's probably going to be a great movie. I just need to get off the
couch, get the remote, hit play. Yeah. Now, and I kind of told you this on the download too. I was like, you don't really have to watch Pearl in order to enjoy Maxine, because Maxine picks up where X leaves off. But I think you do owe it to yourself to watch them in order, because Brian mentioned how good of a Final Girl she is, but he also was talking about just how good she was as an actress. And since she's in all 3 movies, you'll enjoy them.
Yeah, and Pearl definitely, I mean, when people are approaching it and they haven't seen any of them, they always kind of like, well, where should I start? And like it kind of depends on what you're in for. You know, you don't have to watch them out of order or in order. The only ones that you have to really are X and Maxine in order, right? Because it's a direct continuation of the whole thing. Like you could start with Pearl, and Pearl will be fine as it is. But I think that if you're gonna do X first, you have to realize that Pearl is probably a little more of like a fantasy. Like it's definitely Wizard of Oz vibes.
Yep.
That you've got going on there, and it's blatant that it's Wizard of Oz vibes that you have with certain scenes in particular, but it's not going to be that type of horror movie that X was, you know. And they're all different styles, which is great too in terms of what they are. So
all Brian is saying is that there's a good chance Maxine's favorite DC character is a Scarecrow.
Well, Brian, you mentioned Wizard of Oz, so that actually makes me want to see Pearl a little bit more now.
Oh man, I didn't know
there
you
you
were
go.
a fan of Wizard of Oz, Andy.
Oh yeah.
Well, shit, we'll kick it down the yellow brick road and go to your number 4 or 3. Damn, I fucked that up.
All right. As with Dave's honorable mention, people may be a little disappointed that this person isn't higher on my list, but my number 3 is Laurie Strode from the Halloween franchise. Definitely think that she is a strong character. We see a lot of development with her character in Halloween 1 and 2. I mean, especially in Halloween 1, the writing is just really good with Deborah Hill and John Carpenter. They just have really made a good cast of characters for the first movie. And, Laurie does kind of come across as like, they call her the Girl Scout and things like that. But she's not like totally like defenseless or sheltered or whatever. She can definitely take care of herself. And so she's definitely a strong pick. I mean, like I said earlier, she is like the iconic final girl, and I think for good reason. And I think especially for the first Halloween movie, it's a classic, and she's just one of the pieces of the puzzle that makes it a classic.
Is she really that great though? Because she wouldn't even read those cool comics to Tommy when he brought him out from under the couch.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, we ding her up.
yeah, automatically makes her a bad babysitter.
That's right. But no, I love that she's higher up on your list than the credit I gave her to. I wouldn't be surprised if she's not even on Brian's list, judging by some things that he said. Or maybe he'll come at it from like the Rob Zombie version, haha. But no,
yeah,
man,
okay.
he loves those movies. But there's no arguing that Laurie Strode is a really great character, and yeah, I think we owe all the testament to Jamie Lee Curtis's acting, John Carpenter's direction, and Deborah Hill's amazing character writing in that first movie. So I applaud you, sir.
Yeah, I fully agree with Dave there. It's a classic for a reason. My cousin is like the biggest Halloween fan. She's the type of person that when Halloween comes around, and she'll have it on every day of the month, and I know that she would be happy with your pick and very disappointed with me.
Oh, dude, wasn't she just over at my house standing in my sheets on the clothesline?
No. That was somebody else.
Okay, well, that's concerning. Okay.
It might have been Paranormal Pat.
Most likely. Well, hey, speaking of Paranormal Pat, that's a great segue to my number 3, because my number 3 is Jenny Field from Friday the 13th Part 2. And I know Paranormal Pat loves him some Jason Voorhees. And, Jenny Field, I really thought that she was going to be top 2 category for me, and I'll get into reasons why she's not here in a minute, but she is a solid, and so she falls right in the middle of my list. Played by Amy Steele, love Amy Steele. Easily my favorite final girl in all of the Friday the 13th franchise. She is the first final girl to defeat, and I'll do air quotes, defeat Jason Voorhees. She's a camp counselor who uses her degree in psychology to trick Jason. And it's just real easy to pick her as my favorite final girl in the franchise, because Friday the 13th Part 2 is my favorite horror film of that franchise, and the potato sack Jason is my favorite representation. I love that hillbilly killer type Jason Voorhees, and so I don't care if it was stolen from the town that Sundrown. I welcome it, but I was really hoping that her character would return for more sequels, but I just guess that shows you how smart she is, because she got the fuck out of Camp Crystal Lake.
Yeah, it's a strong pick for sure. I mean, she definitely had the intelligence to kind of outsmart Jason, and also the will to kind of fight back and give him a run for his money. And So yeah, I like that pick. She's definitely one of the I think she's one of the most popular final girls when you think of all the different Friday 13th.
Word.
Yeah, I think it's a very good pick.
Well, let's hear about your
That's all.
number 2, man. What do you got?
My number 2 is probably the only classic that's going to be on this list besides Kay, but she's classic for a different reason. But having recently seen this movie a while ago, and it reaffirmed that it's definitely my favorite final girl, and that's Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver from Alien. She's just so goddamn badass, and she's not as badass as she is in the following movies in the original Alien. But I just it's a reason for me to love Sigourney Weaver besides Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2. But just everything that she goes through in the movie, that she's a lot smarter than I think a lot of people give her credit for, that she takes no flack, that when people say, they talk about final girls not necessarily being strong, then I kind of have to point in Ripley's direction, or that, female representation has not always been there in these types of movies from all movies in the past and the way they think they are. And I, again, have to point back to Ripley being one of the first ones that was truly strong, even though she was put in a terrible situation and, she gave everybody flack, but at the same time, she just used her knowledge to get the hell out of there and survive, and becomes even better, to some in Aliens. I really like her in Alien 3 too. I think that one's underrated in my opinion. I know a lot of people do not like Alien 3, but we can forget about Resurrection. That one does not exist.
Wow, yeah, that's a great pick, Brian. I agree.
Yeah, buddy. And I am probably how do I say this? I like the Alien movies. I'm probably the least fan on this recording of that franchise. I have not seen them all. But I knew that she was going to be on either yours or Andy's list because I know how loved and respected that character is. And like you said, you go back to 1979 when Alien came out, she's been doing this since day one. She wasn't the first final girl, but she's one of the first ones. And you could just look at her when she's ready to fight and be like, nah, I don't want none. I'm good.
I mean, she knows when to run and when to stay. I mean, that's the perfect example of a great final girl, right? You're talking about Friday the 13th Part 2 and being able to outsmart Jason but still being able to be on the offensive. That's Ripley to a T.
Sure is. All right, Andy, what do you got for number 2?
All right, my number 2 is it's probably definitely one of my favorite franchises. This is I'll just say it. So it's Sidney Prescott from the Scream franchise, and Scream is kind of like my slasher. It's the one that came out when I was in my teenage years, so I kind of consider that because Halloween came out before when I not really. I mean, I was alive when it came out, but just barely. But yeah, I feel like when Scream came out, this is my slasher movie. So. I really like the character. She's smart. She's witty. She can handle herself, and she does have this knowledge. She's not afraid to talk back to the killer when he's on the phone with her. She's kind of giving him this explanation of why she doesn't like horror movies, and why she doesn't like final girls in horror movies, because they all run up the stairs when they should be running out the front door. And it's kind of funny if she kind of does that same thing just a few minutes later in the movie. So definitely some comedy there. But yeah, she's definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah, I was expecting her to show up somewhere on somebody's list. So I'm glad that she does get a mention. Confession here that Scream is not necessarily my favorite franchise. The first movie is great. The rest of them I'm always iffy on when it comes to them.
Have you at least seen them all?
Yeah, I have seen every one.
Okay, word. So you can actually say that.
A marathon a while ago of all of them. I think in preparation for Scream 5, because okay, I know we're gonna go see it, and because I also kind of want to see what they're doing, but I've personally never been a big fan of Ghostface as a killer.
Oh, I've heard this theory. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not necessarily what everybody says, but I loved the first one in the meta horror narrative of it, and I think Wes Craven did an amazing job with the first film. And out of that, then it's like, for me, it's the fourth film that's probably the second best of the entire franchise.
I 100% agree. I love the first four, but especially in that order of 1, 4, and then 2, 3. But when I said that theory, I didn't mean the world. I meant your theory. I've heard you on your show talk about how you feel about Ghostface, a.k.a. Father Death. So, that's awesome. All right, Andy, I love your pick so much that I'm going to agree with you. My number 2 is also Sidney Prescott from the Scream franchise, played by Neve Campbell. You've mentioned many great things about her, and I think I want to add to it and say that with her character, it is a lot of people's favorite and probably their number one, and rightfully so, right? Because Neve Campbell delivers a powerful performance, and she just grows so much throughout that franchise, which makes her really important because she gets to be in more than one movie, given her why she's number 2 and ahead of Jenny Field. My number 3 is because Jenny Field was only in the one movie. And so with Sidney Prescott, you got to think about the character because she carries a lot of emotional baggage, like the death of her mom, and she has to face that head on because it's always brought up. It's always in her face. She can't escape it no matter what she does. But we get to join her on her journey. We're with her through high school. We're with her through college, after school. We know she gets married, and for reasons I won't spoil, but Ghostface is always there. Like he, she, they, them. They always follow. And just when you think that Ghostface is going to get the upper hand, Sidney Prescott is always one step ahead of it, which makes her a very smart and well-deserved final girl. And so I think for me, I agree with you, and she makes my number 2 spot because of her resilience throughout the franchise.
Awesome.
Yeah, and so you guys know what that means. Brian McKnight, we're
mean?
back to 1. Oh, that was bad, but
Oh, Jesus Christ.
you're Brian McKnight now. But
where's the fucking
I know, and I was going to sing it, but I don't want to ruin everybody because they won't want to stay and listen for the actual number 1s. They'll duck the fuck out. So, Brian, this is cool, man. We've heard your honorable mention. We've heard 4 of your 5 favorites. Now it's time for you to drop the bomb and tell us who is your favorite final girl.
Okay, so this one I think was really the hardest one because I almost did put Ripley up here at top, but I love this actress so much, and this is also a little more recent, and the movie itself completely surprised me, and she's an absolute badass, and she's a badass in a more recent movie within the past year, which was one of my favorite movies of the year. And this is Grace, played by Samara Weaving in Ready or Not.
Boom.
She is just like the whole thing, it's a little more of an action horror comedy when you think about it overall, but thrown into the situation of getting married and then them having to play a game that's basically been, crafted by the devil, and her having to survive these family members that are trying to kill her, and everything that she does in this movie. That last shot of her sitting on the steps smoking a cigarette is one of my favorite shots in cinema, and Samara Weaving is just an amazing actress. Like, if there's a second to Mia Goth in my heart right now, it's Samara Weaving.
I know Renee, friend of mine, listener of the show, he's jumping up and down right now. He loves Samara Weaving too, so he's going to agree with you most likely.
Yeah, and I just recently saw Ready or Not, so yeah, I agree that she was definitely a force to be reckoned with, thrown into like an impossible situation. But yeah, I really enjoyed that movie, and she was a big part of why her character was great. And so yeah, I know she's been in some other movies. So
she was in the 6th Scream.
That's right. Yeah, she was at the beginning, which
Yep.
yeah, which is really cool.
She was in both of those babysitter movies that were done, Babysitter and Babysitter Killer Queen.
Yep.
Babysitter 1 is a lot better.
She was in Azrael. We're just going to name her whole filmography.
Yeah, Azrael is a really good film. You have to deal with the fact, for some people they won't like it because there is no spoken dialogue in the movie. It's all just action, music, sounds, but nobody speaks. And I like the ending of that movie very much. It's one of my favorite types of endings for movies, that at least in the horror genre.
Sweet.
And what else did she do? She did something else that was relatively big recently. Well, she did a Guns Akimbo with Daniel Radcliffe that I thought was really entertaining. Not necessarily great, but it was a very fun movie where he's got like 2 guns that have been like nailed to his hands.
Sounds ridiculous.
Oh, wow.
I'm in.
It is ridiculous, and it's fun. It's just fun, and she's really good in that movie too. Like, I haven't seen her in the movies haven't been great, but her role's always been good. And again, it's the way I feel about Mia Goth too, where she hasn't or the movies haven't always been great, but she's been some of the best parts of those movies.
Pretty solid list, man. I know a lot of people are going to be happy with it because you got some modern movies in there, and that's pretty fucking dope because we're trying to reach them kids today, get everybody in these horror films. And so I love your pick, man. I'll tell you right now, Samara Weaving did not make my top 5, but I don't know if she made Andy's. Andy, what do you got for number 1?
All right, so my number 1 has already been mentioned, and this is Ellen Ripley from the Alien franchise.
I'd have won money on that deal.
Yeah, Brian, I agree. I totally agree. She is, Sigourney Weaver plays a really great character in those movies, with everything, all the adversity that she has to go up against. Not just from the aliens themselves, but just from the human element too. She's just a very strong character, and she's the oldest character out of all of these people we talked about. I don't know. I haven't done the math, but I don't know how long she's actually lived. But she's lived for like hundreds of years, right?
Pretty much.
Hey, women do not like it when you reveal their age, sir.
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if for some reason they had her pop up in one of these random Alien Romulus sequels that they're doing.
Oh, that'd be cool.
That's kind of what's in nowadays, is making sequels to original films and things of that nature, which I'll go ahead and say it right now. That's what you ruined for me, bro. I didn't know Alien Romulus timeline. And so when you were talking about it on your last episode, I'm like spitting my monster. I'm like, it takes place when? Oh, I made it this long and I didn't know that. Thanks, Brian.
Oh, that's not a huge spoiler.
I didn't say the size of it. The size doesn't matter. It's how you use the spoiler, and that's what I'm referring to.
Oh, it's the motion of the spoiler?
That's right. But Andy, I swear, dude, I knew. I know how much because we've done other top 5 podcasts, and you've referred to that being as one of your all-time favorite monster movies in general, and that just gave me the notion that Ellen Ripley was going to be on your list. And when you didn't bring her up yet, that's where I was at. I was just like, he's either going to have the same number 1 as me, or he's going to have Ellen Ripley. And you had Ripley, and that's awesome because I know that's another just badass character. So much so, even brought up in Scream Part 2, they talk about how badass.
Yeah,
it's crazy when you think about the Alien franchise because It has a lot more misses than hits, to be like completely honest. It almost feels like it's a Friday the 13th type of franchise that you've got there. But just like that, people love, I think, the concept of the xenomorph and its world and its lore, and that's what keeps everybody constantly coming back to it.
Are you insinuating that the Friday the 13th franchise has more misses than hits, sir?
Possibly.
No.
I mean, have you seen Jason Takes a Boat? I mean, Jason Takes Manhattan?
Yeah, great movie. I love it.
Oh, God.
And Jason X. Love it. We'll keep going.
Well, everybody loves Jason X.
Yeah, maybe, but nobody loves Jason Goes to Hell.
That's true.
Fucking movie. Oh.
Even the biggest lovers of the Friday the 13th franchise hate that movie.
I listened to this one podcast where I think it was the writer, I think Adam Marcus, if I'm getting that right, wrote it, and he was interviewed on it, and the podcaster was just dumbing down, like, okay, why did you go this route with the story, this, and this? Why did you essentially take our hockey player out of this movie, And he explained it very simply clear, and it's something that I never even thought of, but it almost made me, honestly, when it was over, I just kind of forgave him, and it was kind of like he had no choice to be able to write the movie, something with the rights with Sean Cunningham. He says, you get rid of that fucking hockey mask. And so that's what they had to do, is they had to get, because Friday the 13th was a standalone movie. Victor Miller, we've heard it, the lawsuits, all this stuff here. So they hated the continuing it with Jason, and they were probably bitter that it became so successful, and it is what it is. But that was the retaliation, is like, get rid of that character. And so, okay, do a body snatchers movie, and here you go. And so I kind of forgave it, like, oh well, if he couldn't do what we want, I guess this is better than nothing. But I mean, I would have taken nothing, to be honest. So. All right, so now that I'm talking up a storm, we have Brian's number 1, we have Andy's number 1, we now have my number 1. None of us had the same number 1. That's really awesome. I'm shocked this character has not been brought up. That may tell me how you guys feel about it, but before I reveal who it is, I will tell you this is one of those situations that kind of stopped me in my tracks, because I liked this character and I put them on my list for consideration, but I don't necessarily love one of the movies they're in. But then I said, I may not like love this movie, but I really do love this final girl. And so I had to kind of put myself in check and say, how real do I want to be to this list and whatnot. And so after I really started thinking about it, I'm very happy to say that my number one favorite final girl of all time is Nancy Thompson from Nightmare on Elm Street and Wes Craven's New Nightmare, played by Heather Langenkamp. Wes Craven, obviously we got Scream Love on 2/3 of this podcast. Wes Craven is a true master of his craft, and he created, in my opinion, the greatest final girl with Nancy Thompson. The performance by Heather Langenkamp is just so damn good. She's a likable, smart, creative. She's very creative, really, when it comes down to facing one-on-one, which I think is against the scariest boogeyman to ever appear on film. Because, Brian, you mentioned, being able to run away or hide from, like, you cannot not sleep. Like, that has proven to still kill you in the end. And the original Nightmare on Elm Street is a classic, and Nancy goes from being just like an average high school girl next door type whose biggest battle is probably her grades. And, we don't even... It's kind of like a Sidney Prescott thing where we see what's on the surface, but then as we get more movies with the character, we see what's beneath the surface. And so if you think about Nancy, she deals with her mom's alcoholism and a father who's never around. I now realize why I can relate. But then she has to face a demon in her dreams, and she's alone doing this because everybody thinks she's crazy. No one believes her. And what is really crazy to me is just how much I like her even more in Wes Craven's New Nightmare, because it takes a turn on it, and not only with the storyline, but I feel like her acting is even elevated because she's essentially playing herself. She's put through hell in that movie, and she has more to lose because Freddy's after her son in it. And like I said, you can't hide from Freddy. And so what are you going to do is, if you're going to have that bad of an antagonist, you have to have that badass of a protagonist. And so I feel like Nancy is truly the final girl that you do not want to have to go up against.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a great pick. I mean, it's like another one of those iconic final girls from one of the most iconic horror movies of all time. So yeah, I agree. She's a good pick.
Yeah, I definitely agree that she's a great pick, and she barely missed my list. I definitely love her more in New Nightmare than I do in Dream Warriors or the original. I think that New Nightmare is such a complete movie when it comes to this franchise, and it was that breath of fresh air that the franchise really needed, and I wish they had done more along that route moving forward when they did more movies. I definitely think she's a very strong character, more so in Dream Warriors than the original, and I think that's a great pick.
Thanks, and I'm sure like a lot of listeners were like really happy that like, oh yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street love, but then really mad because I'm like, oh, the first film's like, wait a fucking minute, like we liked you for a second, now you're gonna shit on it, and I'm not. I'm shocked at how much we're alike on that, Brian, because a lot of people don't hold New Nightmare as high a regard. Cough, cough, Andy. But that's okay because we're all entitled to our own opinion. But I think one thing we can agree on is, New Nightmare was written and directed by Wes Craven. And even though Wes Craven did not write Scream, Kevin Williamson, who wrote Scream, had to have been pulling from that because it totally laid the foundation for the meta stuff that came in Scream. And so, yeah, just going back and looking at all the final girls and everything, in a way, it's like you couldn't leave off Nancy Thompson, but then the more I thought about it, she goes honorable mention, number 5, number 4, and she made her way all the way to the top, and I feel really good about it, and I'm happy we did this podcast, guys. It's a fun list.
Oh, yeah, it's a blast.
Yeah, I'm glad that there wasn't a huge amount of crossover, too, between a lot of it. So everybody's kind of all over their place, and you can tell everybody has their own tastes and different opinions on everything. Well, except for, Ripley with Andy and I.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I am shocked that nobody had the final girl from The Descent on there. I purposely avoided her because I thought you guys might have had her, and now I'm like, okay, well, then let's just whisper. She'll be my second honorable mention.
Okay.
Yeah, I like her a lot, but it depends on which ending that you're talking about.
Well, obviously
if
the
you're going
unrated
with the U.S. ending. Yeah, if you do the unrated ending, then I do kind of like her a little more than I like her in the U.S. ending.
We won't talk about the
movie.
sequel. But
there's one too. If you're going to throw sneakily a second honorable mention, I want to talk about one person real fast, and that's Red Adelaide from Us, played by Lupita Nyong'o,
yes.
and she's an absolute amazing final girl that doesn't seem like a final girl, and if you know the movie, kind of isn't a final girl. And that was the one that I had the most trouble with, of even including her with the stuff. But I think that performance is just absolutely amazing, and I wish that in some regards that she got a little more attention than she did, because Lupita Nyong'o in general, besides having a last name that I stumble over constantly, she's just like a gem of an actress that's out there. And for her to do that movie and to do it so well, and to do these two characters that are absolutely just brilliant, deserves full recognition.
Yeah, I agree, and you made Julie really happy, so thank you.
Yeah, definitely another strong pick there. Yeah. So yeah, this is a fun time having Brian on the show. And Brian, for people out there that may not know you, tell us a little bit about your show, and just tell us about your show and what it's all about.
Sure. So you guys can check out the Terrible Terror podcast. Like Andy had said, and we talked at the beginning, I've been doing it for too goddamn long. And basically, the original idea for the show, and it kind of has evolved and become much longer because of it, was that I wanted to make a podcast mostly about bad horror movies, but it's kind of just evolved into horror movies and kind of what I'm feeling at the moment, or what people suggest if they want to have a specific one talked about. And I wanted it to be a movie that it's like you're sitting down with your friends and you guys are talking trash about the movie. And so the idea is that I take a horror movie, and normally it's probably a bad one, but no horror movie is really bad in my opinion. It's just levels of, how much fun can you have with it. And so I go through the whole film. I talk about everything. It's primarily just me. Every now and then I do guests. It's a marathon when anybody else comes on. That's why I like to keep everybody be like, oh, I'd love to have guests more often, but to have them sit through, do 3 hours of podcast, it's really rough. Or with Dave, do 6 hours of a podcast.
Damn it.
And then edit it down. But yeah, I play clips from the movie, like basically kind of riff off of the things and go through with, rants, discussions, and every now and then there is a absolute gem of a movie, and sometimes even the worst movies become a gem of a movie as you listen through it. So it's available on all podcasting platforms, wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Yeah, everybody should go out and check it out. It's a really fun show. I know me and Dave are both big fans of it.
I appreciate you guys for having me on here on this podcast, and I appreciate you guys when you've come over to my podcast and gone through the marathon.
Woo! Let's do it.
Yeah, I'll have to do that.
Take your
sometime,
caffeine pills and let's go. And if anybody,
I promise not to do it at night. We can do it during the day, so that way people, can take breaks and whatnot.
and if people are interested in it, I can recommend damn near any episode on there. That they're really good. Brian's a good friend. I have a lot of fun listening. We became friends because I was a fan of his podcast, and he became a fan of what I do. And I brought Andy in the circle, and we all enjoyed talking movies, which is why we did this list. But you go look at his show. I have probably been on there a million times because I used to run a separate show that was on there. But Andy's made his way on there before too, and so you check out any of those episodes. It's guaranteed to be a good time, whether you want to listen to Blade Trinity or Spawn or any of mini episodes that we do. I had a lot of fun doing that, and I'm hoping, my God, here we go. It's 2025. Let's make this a good Christmas and just sign me up for one more. I'm like Gary Busey from Rookie of the Year. Give me one more.
Yeah, we could always wish you a Merry Turtle Christmas if we wanted to.
At this point, I'm willing for a sequel.
Yeah, so that wraps up this episode. Until next time, I'm Abnormal Andy.
And I'm Phantom Dark Dave.
And thanks for listening to the Screaming Skull Podcast.